Yeah, let's go. Hi, everybody. If you haven't had the chance to talk to me yet, you should talk to me afterward. But my name is Trin Baumgarten, and I am a member of technical staff at the Aerospace Corporation. And joining me today is Caroline Jones, who is an engineering manager at the Aerospace Corporation. And today we're going to talk to you guys about how you can kickstart InnerSource at your company, or well, more like how we did it at ours, but maybe get some ideas for yours with a Contribfest. But to start, we'd like to give a little bit of background on aerospace itself so you can understand our development environment. And for that, I'm going to hand it off to Caroline.
All right, thanks, Trin. Um, yeah, hi everyone at the InnerSource Summit. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it out to New York today, but I'm super happy to be able to present with Trin virtually, even if I'm a ghost voice from beyond. Apparently, the people online can see me. So, Trin, if you want to move on
Oh,
to the
we can see
next
her now?
slide.
Yay! Caroline, you're
Okay,
on one of the
great.
screens here.
I'm
Hi,
back in the land of the
Caroline.
living. Great.
Yay. Well,
All right, perfect. So let's just jump right into things. What exactly is the Aerospace Corporation? Aerospace is the only FFRDC dedicated to the space enterprise. An FFRDC, if you're unfamiliar, is a federally funded research and development center which provides objective advice and performs research and development activities for the US government. Next slide, Trin. Specifically, aerospace is a trusted partner for the US government for complex space enterprise problems. Aerospace provides unique capabilities and foundational knowledge to shape this new era of space that we find ourselves in. We perform work on contracts with various government entities, the majority of which is research and prototyping. And now that I've given you all some background on aerospace, Trin will talk a little bit more about the development environment here for software engineers.
all right. So prototyping. We work with a lot of different companies, work on a lot of different contracts. And what that means is that we have a lot of separate projects. And each of these projects is going to have different goals. They're going to have different customers. They're going to have different timelines and needs. So, if you're working at Microsoft, you're working on a Microsoft project, or we're working on a Microsoft product. We're a bit more like contractors. So everything's very, very separate. Um, this can be great in some ways because we're working on so many different things with a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different companies. It makes way for a lot of technical excellence. We look at a lot of different technologies, we garner a lot of resources, but we could benefit from more centralization of this knowledge. And by that I mean those shared tools. Shared tools that we develop, we'll have a project and it might develop an amazing tool with a new technology that gets introduced to uniquely from a unique perspective, but there might not be shared. I'm going to go more into the matrix organization of our company. So basically, let's say we have project A, we have project D. They're working on completely different contracts. Now, project A, with these two people, the dancers and this other dancer, might develop an amazing tool with their project that could be useful to other people. They develop it, with reusability somewhat in mind. And it could benefit, this alien over here working on project D. However, how do they find out about that tool? How do they find out about that tool? How do they use that tool? And here we kind of need to rely on this kind of communication across projects. So we have developers that instead of them having a central project that they're assigned to, they'll work on a number of different contracts, they'll work on a number of different projects. And so this communication can happen and it's great. They'll discover it, they'll find that tool, but it doesn't reliably happen. And then in addition to that, let's say that, well, that tool is great, it solves a problem over there on that project, but it needs a core feature that they need to add, right? And because project A is assigned to this project, they're charging to this contract, they don't have the funding, the bandwidth in order to develop that feature. And then on project D, they don't have the access and the ability to add that feature or the funding to work on that directly. And even if they did, well, they don't have the funding to approve and review the pull request. So what ends up happening is that they fork it. They fork the beautiful tool. And we end up with a fork storm on all of our beautiful tools. They all get forked up. So then what's it like for InnerSource specifically, right? So first of all, we're doing a grounds up approach. Me and Caroline are on a team with a few other developers dedicated to coding best practices, and a big part of that is InnerSource. And we've made some fantastic resources. We've made a library of software templates. for certain, common software things that we build. And we've also built a shared documentation site that anybody can contribute to, which, is InnerSource. And of course, on that documentation site is also documentation on how to make your project InnerSource. But here's the problem. So we'll walk through it. Number one, remember, developers charge to contracts, right? Side effect of that, there's an influence on, there's a constraint on influencing devs to use InnerSource. Big part of that, we're a nonprofit. You can't use the incentive of long-term profits to incentivize leadership to force developers to use InnerSource practices. And then when you're working on these contracts and you're working on all these projects, InnerSource off the bat, it just seems like more work. Because we charge to contracts, everybody's time is pre-assigned in matrix to those contracts. And because of that, technical expertise becomes siloed. So and I saw before, project A, project B, project C, project D. And along with that knowledge of just, for example, the tools and the code that they work on, it's also the InnerSource knowledge that becomes siloed, right? And now because everybody's time is pre-assigned in matrix to contracts, that means if something isn't embedded into the tasking, it's not part of the mission. Which means that if InnerSource isn't part of the mission, it doesn't happen. So this is the big question. I know it's a question for a lot of other developers, a lot of other teams and projects. How do we get people to incorporate InnerSource into their tasking in the first place? Devs on that level, building software. This was our big answer, or an idea to help it out. Number one, you make it easy, big one. 2, you pay people to learn about it, another big one. And 3, you make learning about it enjoyable. And then we had the idea, we're going to do a Contribfest. And we figured, well, people can learn by doing. We love doing that. Software people love doing that. They don't like to listen to somebody talk about something for a really long time and then maybe think about doing it. They like to just do it, right? So we had the idea for the Contribfest, and a lot of you are probably wondering, well, what the heck is that? So I'm going to pass it back to Caroline, because this whole event was actually her idea.
All right, thanks, Trin. Yeah, so what is a Contribfest? It's sort of like a hackathon. And at this hackathon, attendees work usually on an open source project, and with those maintainers to learn about the project, understand how they can contribute to it, and then hopefully by the end of the event, hopefully actually submit and get their first pull request to that project merged in. So this idea for an InnerSource Contribfest actually came to me when I attended my first Contribfest at the KubeCon and Cloud Native Con. When I was there, I went to one of these Contribfests and I learned about the open source project, how to contribute to it. I met some of the maintainers in person who helped me through the whole process. I actually ended up opening my pull request and got it merged in by the end of the event, and just overall had a really great time. And so I kind of thought after that, we can definitely do this internally for our own InnerSource projects. So to socialize that idea around and getting buy-in from management, we put together some big goals for our InnerSource Contribfest. So first, we wanted to get the word out about InnerSource. We also wanted to familiarize developers with InnerSource projects and practices. We definitely wanted to produce impactful contributions to the InnerSource projects. And then finally, we definitely all wanted to have a lot of fun. So to accomplish all of that, we had some prep work that we had to do, which Trin is going to tell you some more about.
All right, so we're going to do this event. We're excited for this event. A lot of prep work needed to be done beforehand. Number one, you got to get funding. People charge to contracts. We need funding that everybody can charge to. We procured funding for around 30 attendees for our first event. After that, awareness. We sent out emails. We posted in Teams channels. We already had a Teams channel that was for our other efforts in software best practices. We posted it there. We sent out stuff to Teams. We told our friends. We also sent out an opening survey to gauge people's knowledge already of InnerSource, maybe some stuff that they'd want to work on, and specifically what languages, what kind of tasking. And then, of course, it would be useful later for metrics, right? After that, organizing. Decide what that tasking looks like. We reached out to developers at Aerospace who were already maintainers on projects that were already InnerSource, and asked them, what features need to be implemented? What don't you guys want to work on? What is something that people have been asking for, but you don't have time to implement? And we turn those into tasks. And then we documented the tasking, and decided what those collaboration spaces would look like, what the actual event is going to look like. So it was actually a hybrid event, and I was there online and Caroline was there in person. So we've done a little switch for this presentation. But the big part, of course, is the tasking itself, right? So the idea here was that we wanted the tasking to be as easy as possible to dive into, right? You have developers who are taking a random day out of their work year and coming in, and they're looking at new code that they've never seen before, some projects that they have never seen before, and they need to jump into the tasking. So we wanted to make it as easy to pick up as possible. First of all, we made some Kanban boards. We got all the tasking in one place where they could browse it, select it, had it all organized. It was like a Contribfest board, kind of a landing page for everything everybody could work on. After that, we made those tasks really, really descriptive. I'm not sure if you can fully see it up there, but we had the languages involved, the skills required, the general background, the task itself, some resources in links to help people jumpstart, get started. And then, of course, we wrote the impact because we wanted people to feel very good about their contributions. We wanted people to look at a task and be like, so this is what will be used for if I get this done. And that can feel really good. Oh, I also wanted to say, we wrote some of these and filled out some of these templates, but then we also sent them to the project maintainers so they could write them themselves for their tasks. After that, we also wanted to make sure that each of these tasks had a very clear definition of done, because we didn't want people to, finish all of their work for a task, send it off, and then later hear, actually, you didn't do this quite right, or actually, we needed this for it. Again, they're looking at this code for the first time. We wanted them to feel really good about those pull requests, and we wanted those pull requests to be merged. So very clear on that. And after that, we had a nice task flow chart, very easy to discover the tasks, figure out what you want to work on. Along in that document, we had links to everything so people could easily jump and find those repos that they needed or the resources that they would need to better understand those projects. And then, of course, we had the event. So first off, introductions, got everybody into a big Teams chat, provided an overview of InnerSource for people who maybe didn't read the emails very closely, introduced the tasks and projects available so people would have an idea of what they were working on, and then show where to get the tasking, send out those task flow charts, link those Kanban boards, just make it, again, super, super easy to jump into. And then we had our work session. We had a Teams call that anybody could join. I was sitting in there the entire time, ready for people to hop in or hop out, hang out, answer any questions anybody had. Caroline was on site in the room. We had a maintainer from every single one of the InnerSource projects available, at least one, available in the Teams call or chat for Q&A. And of course, we had all the developers working on tasking, either online or in person in a room over in El Segundo, California. After our work session was done, we had some closing statements, thanked our awesome participants for participating in our event, and then we linked a closing survey to get an idea of, what'd you guys like? What went wrong? What could we do a little bit better next time? What did you enjoy working on, or what did you get done? And then we had some follow-up. There are people who didn't quite finish their tasking, maybe didn't quite get that pull request in, worked with people to close up their tasking. And then after that, we sent out we had sent out the closing survey. So we reviewed the results of that closing survey, looked at the metrics of it, saw if this had any impact on contributions long-term. And I'm going to pass it to Caroline, who's going to go over some of the results of those metrics and other impacts that we saw.
Yeah, thanks, Trin. So I know there's been actually a lot of discussion at this event and other events about how do you actually track the impact of InnerSource, and there's been lots of great ideas for that. We actually have we had some really great metrics come out of the Contribfest actually that we were able to track that we'd like to share with you. So firstly, we had 31 participants. And we did this over a summer where we had interns on site as well as online. So that 31 also includes some interns. And this was across 21 different departments in the company, which is a really great sampling of developers in different areas in the company. And one neat thing is that many of these developers would rarely or never work on projects together in their day-to-day. We also track traffic on our internal documentation site, and this site includes information just in general about InnerSource and also on general like software standards and best practices. And after the event, we found that visits nearly doubled over the next month to this site. And finally, there were 15 tickets that were closed during or shortly after the Contribfest. We also had a case where a developer reached out to one of the projects and mentioned that he was using their project as a library in his own project. And he wanted to ask about adding a feature to that library that he needed for his project. So he worked with the project and he got that feature developed and merged in during the Contribfest. So that slide that Trin went over with the Project A, with the dancers, and Project D with the alien as one of our main use cases, we actually saw that in action at Contribfest, which was a major win for this event for us. And this really showed InnerSource working in practice to reduce the instances of those like forked or diverging versions of the same library that Trin covered earlier. So next slide. Before the event, 2/3 of participants had actually never heard of InnerSource, but when we surveyed everyone who attended after the event, we found that every developer agreed with the statement that InnerSource will have a positive impact on development at Aerospace and that they want to participate in a future InnerSource Contribfest. And we also got a quote from a participant that we wanted to share with you here. They said, "I feel like the most beneficial part of this was increasing visibility on these projects. I'm more likely to use InnerSource resources on a future project because of Contribfest." So next slide, moving on from the metrics, we definitely had some lessons learned from running this event for the first time. So our first lessons learned is we want to improve the collaboration and interaction across geographically dispersed in-person sites and virtually. And if we can, we want to ensure that each project has at least one in-person attendee at each in-person site where it's possible. This will just help us with some of the collaboration and management of the event. Next lessons learned. Beforehand, we need to spend a little bit more time on some of the small details, such as managing access and permissions. Some people had to request access to the repos and resources, and it caused a little bit of a bottleneck at the beginning of the event for that to get squared away. So another lessons learned is we need to provide next steps up front. So we got a lot of messages from people asking for additional time and funding to close out the tasks that they had started during the Contribfest but couldn't quite manage to finish during the event. And in addition to that, we should work with each project team and maintainers so that they're prepared to be able to adjudicate and determine next steps on each of those unfinished tasks as well. And then last but not least, this has been a big recurring theme today. Next time you really need to provide food and coffee and tea for people. Wish we had heard some of the talks today that suggested this before doing this event, but we will get this done for next time. And what are we doing now that we've had our first Contribfest? So we want to do Contribfest number 2 and make it bigger, better, and incorporate some of those lessons learned that I went over. We want to address the feedback that we received to improve InnerSource and some of our internal developer resources. We want to do targeted outreach as well to new and existing projects because we want to have more InnerSource projects at Aerospace. And finally, we want to keep this going outside of the Contribfest. We want to have contributions going year-round and supplement those with future Contribfests as well. All right, thank you. Trin, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, so that's our presentation. I hope you guys got some ideas from this on maybe how you could host your own Contribfest. I know the Z team was talking earlier. They mentioned the hackathon that they host at IBM, and I heard a couple people, there was a little bit of buzz about that. So hopefully this gives you guys some more insight into what that kind of event can look like.